I'm going to be doing a colored pencil demonstration of these realistic cherries and sharing a website where you can get unlimited downloads for your own reference photos. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Today's tutorial is sponsored by Graphic Stock. Graphic Stock is a stock image website with over 300,000 graphics, photos, vectors, and images. They have the largest unlimited download library of stock images on the internet. As you know, most websites charge per graphic that you want to use in any type of commercial project or for your own artwork. A lot of those charge as much as $30 per image. When you're downloading a lot of images for different projects, that adds up really quickly. With Graphic Stock, you're unlimited. There is no limit. You can download all 300,000 of their photos if you want in that year. Their memberships come with a 100% royalty-free agreement, meaning that you are protected and will not get sued by copyright holders for using these images in any of your commercial projects or in your artwork. Their memberships usually run $99 a year, but for this holiday season, Graphic Stock is offering an exclusive $50 discount. So you get this giant library and royalty-free license for $50 off. That is pretty awesome. Just go to graphicstock.com/holidays or click the link in the video description below to get your $50 off of your membership. I've had my membership with Graphic Stock for quite a few months now. One of the things that I'm finding that I love myself about their website is that it's not just for reference photos. I'm using their photos all the time on my blog posts now, or when I make my thumbnails for YouTube. This thumbnail, I used a few different images and photoshopped them together to make the perfect thumbnail for that video. For today's demonstration, I will have a link in the video description of the cherries that I'm drawing here, so if you do sign up and get your own membership, or if you already have a membership to Graphic Stock, you can draw this one yourself, and even if you were to copy it exactly, you're not going to run into copyright violations. You can sell it, you can make prints, you have full rights to do whatever you want with that image because you paid for the license with your membership. Let's go ahead and jump into this demonstration. For this piece, I'm working on sanded paper. This is the UArt 500. Remember, when you're using Powder Blender to blend your colored pencils, you want to work on either sanded paper or gessoed paper. Usually the sanded paper is a little bit easier because it's already ready to go. You don't have to do any prep work on it. You want to use a very light hand when drawing everything out. I am barely letting that pencil touch the paper there. You don't have to push hard for this. If you push too hard, it won't blend right. You'll end up with a grainy, gritty look. Now I am using this sponge brush to blend out. I'm using a touch of Powder Blender. A little bit goes a very long way. Blending that out and then adding another layer on top of that. Now this is easier, I found, about halfway through this project. If you spray in between each of your layers of blending out with the Powder Blender, spray with the brush and pencil colored pencil texture fixative. That will seal down your first layer so you don't keep knocking the pencil back off the paper. So here you can see I'm using my Polychromos white. Normally I don't like the Polychromos white, but when using Powder Blender, it is definitely the way to go so that you end up getting it to blend really nicely. I'm adding a bit of the titanium white powder with one of the sponge brushes right on top of the colored pencil, and it gives just this really nice soft look. Adding more pencil and blending that out. And again, if I would have sprayed this with the colored pencil texture fixative in between each of these layers, it would have made my life much easier. I didn't realize how easy it is to spray that. You can actually spray that stuff indoors. I thought it was going to be like fixatives that I've used before where you have to spray it outdoors because the scent is so strong. Not the case here. So on to the cherries. I'm going to block in my general lights and darks. I'm not going to put just straight black where the black is going to be. Anytime I use the black, it's mixed in with other colors. Here with the burgundy. Later on, I'll end up mixing blues and more of the burgundies and reds on top of that to really get a deeper color. Now for my background, this is just such a beautiful macro photo that I'm using, the reference photo. And that means the background here is going to be very out of focus. So I want to make sure my edges are really blurred. I don't want sharp edges there. In order to create that depth in this piece, it is really important that those edges are nice and soft. So you can see I'm keeping those soft edges where it blends right into the background. You can see that they're cherries. You can see that they're there, and what that shape is. It's not totally abstract, but I don't want sharp lines. If I have harsh, sharp lines there, I'm going to lose the depth that this reference photo was so great about. This photo, because of the cherries up front having so much detail, and having the sharp edges, that's what's creating the depth here. I'm adding quite a bit of oranges and yellows into my cherries to brighten them up. And blending out again. Now, if I were to do this one again, the difference would be in between each of these layers. I would have sprayed that texture fixative. I did not, I was turning it into this whole event where I thought again, I'd have to go outside and spray and wait forever for it to dry, and it's just not. It dries pretty much as quickly as hairspray. The scent or odor evaporates about as quickly as hairspray. So it was really no big deal just to spray indoors at my easel. That is definitely something that I will be doing in the future to make my job a lot easier, because if you're not spraying that, it's not sealing down your previous layers, and you start getting to the point where you feel like you're knocking too much of the pencil off the paper. So by sealing it with that colored pencil texture fixative, that will create the look that you're going for there as far as getting the darks really dark without having it pull off the paper. The rest of these are pretty much the same, all of them somewhat out of focus, very, very soft edges. Using a lot of the oranges, different oranges and yellows mixed in with my reds, magentas, and purples. And I'm not using any wax-based pencils on this. I find that the wax-based pencils don't blend out as smoothly as the oil-based. I much, much prefer my oil-based pencils here. I did use the Lyra Rembrandt a couple of times, but those ones seemed a little bit waxier. I think the Polychromos work the best that I found with the powder, wow, I can't talk, with the powder blender. And these are just the same. All of them have that soft edge. Even the background here, that wood that they're setting on, I don't want too much detail in the background there. I will keep any of the finer, sharper edges when I get up into the foreground. Because the foreground, I'm using the exact same colors in the foreground that I did the background. So the way that I'm separating the two and creating depth isn't by color like I might often do. In this case, it's only separated by the difference in how sharp my edges are. So keeping those ones in the back very soft is really important. Adding a little bit of this light blue into that as well for some of the reflections. Not too much. I don't want to go too crazy with the blue there. And of course, highlights, softening all of that out. And I will switch to the smaller sponge blender when I'm working on little areas, and then I'm using that bigger pan pastel type sponge blender for the large areas to blend out the powder blender. Now, as I start moving onto the foreground, I'm going to spray all of this. Before I get started on the foreground, I am going back over and adding a few more details and touch-ups, a few more layers here, especially making sure that I get some of the blues and reds over the black so that it's not just flat black. Also, if you spray the texture fixative and you get any splatters, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I mean, if you shake your can better, that won't happen. Make sure the nozzle is clean. Sometimes I rinse mine out. If the nozzle does start to get clogged, just set it in hot water. I fill my sink with hot water. I put a little bit of hot water in there and just let the nozzle pull it off the can and let it soak in there. But if you do have splatters happen, for me, it's just bound to happen sooner or later because I get lazy about making sure everything the can's shaken well enough or that I didn't clean the nozzle well enough. All I do is just go over it. Any splatters that happen, you just go over it quickly with the pencil in that area and you can fix any of that. It's not a big deal. Nothing's ruined or anything like that. I've had it happen in a few areas. And again, you just go over it with a pencil and it doesn't hurt anything. So, and it will hide any of those splatters that might happen on your paper. So don't panic if it happens. So right now I'm focusing on my lights and my darks in the leaf. I'll come back through and add details later. And on this cherry, again, same thing, focusing on the lights and the darks, gonna blend that out, spray it lightly, and then go on to my next layer. This is where I realized how convenient it is to spray in between each layer. I was able to work through this so much faster than I did the background cherries because I wasn't fighting with getting the colors really bold here. I wasn't knocking the pencil off the paper like I was before. And again, going over, just brightening those colors up, making sure my edges are really sharp. This is where it starts becoming so important to have sharp, crisp edges to separate the foreground here from the background cherries because they are all the same color. Sprayed that lightly. Now I'm going to go over it again. And if you spray it and some of the overspray gets on an area some of that got onto the cherry that I haven't worked on yet, it doesn't matter. When it dries, I can just work over it. You would never know that it was sprayed with anything. The spray does two things. One, it's going to seal down your previous layers. The second thing it does is add a little bit more tooth to the paper so that if you do burnish and you lose the tooth, you can just spray some of this, it pulls the tooth back, and you're able to keep layering. So you're pretty unlimited on how many layers you can get with this. And I know a lot of people are going to ask me if there are other sprays that you can use if you can't get the texture fixative. No, none of them are the same. I've tried some different workable fixatives and none of them even come close to this. Going to go ahead and start adding my water droplets now, and I'm using the same colors I did on the leaf, just adjusting where my lights and my darks are. Dark greens, light greens, and then a little bit of white for my highlights. And that white pencil shows up so nicely over this sanded paper with that texture fixative underneath it. It just sticks to it really well. Now when you spray texture fixative, do make sure that you let it dry all the way before you work over it. It only takes a few minutes. Going to do the same thing with some of the water droplets on this cherry. Now, if you want to see this slower, I do have the live stream that I did last week on this project that I will have a card pop up so you can check that out. And that will be the cherry that we're going to be skipping in a second here because that is on the live stream. Add some highlights, making the orange a little bit more bold. I did pull more orange in there. Now, while there are a few water droplets on the cherries in the background, I don't want to put too much of those in there. I don't want them to be too bold because that would really take away from the ones up front having so much sharp detail. And on mine, I didn't put as many water droplets as are on that reference photo. And I'll have a link to that reference photo if you want to see what I'm working from over at Graphic Stock. But I don't have nearly as many water droplets. I feel like it would have been too much for the artwork. I definitely toned those down quite a bit. Adding some orange into the wood grain here. I'm not just using brown. Making sure my lines are fairly sketchy so that it does look like wood grain. And I don't need to copy this exact, I just want to use the reference photo as a general guide as to the direction that the wood grain is going there. But I'm not going to worry about every single little teeny tiny line being exact. So on to the leaf here, and again, that second cherry, that is on the live stream, so I don't have that in this video. On this one, I'm going to start with my light green. I blended that out, lightly sprayed it with the texture fixative, and then going over it again with the darker greens, and I'm just going to keep building my layers. And this is a lot like oil painting or acrylic painting where I'll do a lot of glazing to tone things down. I'll blend things out, I'll spray it with the texture fixative, let that dry, and then I can basically glaze on top of it where I'm tinting the color. You can still see the detail underneath, you can still see what's there, but by doing that glaze, it just tints the color. I had sprayed that again before doing the detail here. I've got to make sure that that outer edge is really, really sharp. I want that to be very crisp. Again, making sure that this one has more detail than what is in the background. It separates that from the background. The detail there is a little sharp, so I will basically glaze another color over it to tone that down. I'm also using quite a few of reds and oranges mixed in with the green here. Remember, with complementary colors, which in this case would be the red and the green, they'll neutralize each other. So if you've got green that's just too fluorescent, too bright, add a little bit of red, that'll tone it down. And the other way around, if your reds are too fluorescent, too bright, add a little bit of green and that will neutralize it, toning it down. So while you look at this leaf and don't necessarily see red, it's in there just neutralizing that green a bit in certain areas. There's another photo from Graphic Stock that I want to do a portrait using the powder blender and colored pencil combination with roses, and it's just absolutely beautiful. I'm so excited. I've already ordered the paper. It's going to be a bigger one on a 16 by 20 inch piece. So that I will be doing in the very near future. It'll be my first time working on a portrait using powder blender, but I've already picked the reference photo from Graphic Stock. They've got some beautiful portraits. There's a girl who's got roses on her head, and I'm so excited to draw it. So that will be coming in the fairly near future too. Onto the ground here. I finished that leaf just like I did the other one, adding some water droplets, spraying my texture fixative in between layers, making sure I've got those nice sketchy lines so it looks like wood grain. The very last thing I'm going to do is to mix my touch-up texture with the titanium white and paint, and I do have a video showing you how I do that, so I'll have a card pop up so you can check that out. But I'm going to paint these sharper edges to really make the details on these cherries that are up front much more crisp. It pushes them forward that much more. And I'm using, I believe that's a number 3 tack, or I'm sorry, that one is a synthetic hog-haired liner brush. Few little details here and there. If I go too crazy with the details on this, it's not a big deal. The colored pencil will go right over it when it dries, so I can cover up anything if I did get out of hand with my details there with the white, which is easy to do because you'll start putting a few dots here and there and realize, wow, this looks great, and then put too many. No big deal. You can tone those down later. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Thanks for watching. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, art Q&A videos every Thursday, artist vlogs each Saturday, and live streams on most Wednesdays. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+. All of those social media sites are linked below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and be notified of when those live streams are coming. Chicken, I can't hold you right now. I have to record a video. You're making this very difficult. You can't be here. I can't do this because you won't hold still and you'll try to remove my necklace while I work. Yeah, this is why he can't be in the video. You're adorable, but this is not practical.